there are some jitters, not the least of which has to concern what's going on in the Persian Gulf. We have just learned that the USS Abraham Lincoln is moving into position near Iran. The president is saying that he doesn't want war. Of course, no one does, but you can easily accidentally slip into something like that. The former National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney joins us right now. I'm happy to say in the flesh. We always talk remotely, but John Hanna here with us now. Good to see you.
Great to be with you, Neil.
So much could go wrong so easily, right? When you and we're getting all these reports that each side might be misreading the other. What are you hearing?
Well, of course, I haven't seen the intelligence, but I don't really think this is a failure to communicate on behalf of these states. They both know what they're doing. What the United States has done is left the nuclear deal and is launched a major form of economic warfare against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And they are slowly but surely driving that country to its knees economically. And I think the mullahs are looking for any way to get some leverage over the United States to inflict some degree of pain in the only ways that they know how, which is terrorism, which is economic sabotage of these ships in the Gulf.
So you have no doubt, or you're pretty sure that it would be them or those sympathetic to Iran?
I have almost no doubt. I'm not the president.
Why would they risk that, though? See, I always look like, if you know you've got an armada of U.S. ships and soldiers coming your way, why would you risk rattling the tiger's cage?
Well, I think precisely because they see this train bearing down on them that is driving their economy into a ditch. And the Iranians, to their credit, are masters at asymmetrical warfare. It would be, as you say, suicidal for them to ever think about taking on the United States Navy directly. But doing things against our allies in the gray zone, just beneath the threshold of something that would actually trigger a U.S. military response. Look at what they've done in Saudi Arabia on the pumping stations in the Gulf against those ships.
What would be a U.S. military response, John? An outright invasion of Iran?
No, I think what Trump is engaged in right now, I think, is a prudent demonstration of American might to send the signal to the Iranians. Don't think about doing anything. This is all about deterrence and avoiding war. If, in fact, the Iranians were stupid enough to cross a U.S. red line, kill some American troops, for instance, or dramatically ramp up their nuclear program, then I think you're probably looking at things initially from the air to inflict pain on the Iranians. But it
wouldn't be limited. Once we start something like that, it's not a limited event.
Then you don't know where you go up the escalation ladder. That's exactly right. And I'm convinced the president doesn't want any part of that. He wants to avoid war, and he's determined, along with his advisors, that the best way to do that is to send a message of overwhelming military strength if the Iranians were to decide to test us.
There's been reports of discord within the White House among its foreign policy aides that John Bolton wants to go one way, many other members of the team want to go another, and just everyone take a chill pill. I mean, do you know anything about that? Or?
I can't say I've got any direct insight. Listen, John Bolton is a guy with very strong views, sharp bureaucratic elbows. He wins an awful lot of the policy debates he gets into. And I think there are a lot of people in Washington looking now for a chance to undermine John. And I think that this is a lot of Washington politics, but I think everybody in the administration is basically on message here that the purpose of this military deployment here is to deter Iran, not to provoke a military conflict.
Now, you said at the outset you don't know the intelligence, you can't verify it. Some earlier in the week had questioned it and whether it was worth the response that we're getting. I think it started with we saw some missiles in some Iranian vessels. The Iranians said nothing there, and certainly nothing offensive. And back and forth, this whole communication problem. It's in the eye of the beholder, but we wouldn't be creating a crisis where there was none, would we?
I've never been part of a U.S. government. I've been part of 3 administrations that would have done that type of thing. Now,
I guess what I'm asking is another weapons of mass destruction? Be careful, you know?
Well, I think you always need to be careful about the way you interpret the intelligence, which is important. And I think Congress has got a point here why the administration does need to be going to Congress and sharing as much as they can. There is a problem here in that I think we've probably had some foreign partners delivering intelligence to us that may or may not be releasable to a broader audience. But I do think the administration, to the extent it can, needs to be transparent with Congress and with the public as much as possible about the nature of the real threats that they're seeing here.
I like what you added, to the extent it can. It's a dicey proposition. John Hanna, thank you. Very good seeing you.
Great to be with you, Neil.